Okay, we are continuing our quality control in Project Kickoff video series, Chapter 12, looking at the second core concept of process management. So, of course, the first step to managing a process is to understand it, to understand the way your process works. So whatever business it is you're in, whatever your organization does, it's important to be familiar with it and how it works. And you can do that with a SIPOC model, and we'll go over that here in the next slide. Look at different ways of controlling the process and making improvements with a PDCA model, which we'll go over here in just a moment. So the SIPOC acronym stands for Supplier Input Process Output Customer. And essentially this is a general model for the flow of work that is done within a project. So materials are procured from a supplier. Input in terms of information is put into the process. That the process itself is executed. Then you get an output which is delivered to the customer. And so if you're in a business that regularly provides deliverables to a customer, you need to understand the way that work is done, the way it flows. And you can think backwards from the final project or final deliverable backwards through the process to understand all the steps that are taken to achieve that final deliverable, and take a look at each one and think of ways that things could be done better, ways that the quality of each individual step could be improved. When we talk about process control, we're looking at ways of making sure that what you're doing is achieving the level of performance that you want. So you need to establish some standard and then measure your actual performance to determine, are you meeting that standard? And if you are, then that's great. You can either do nothing or perhaps revisit the standard. Maybe the standard needs to be raised. But if you're not meeting the standard, you need to look at ways in which you can achieve that standard. So there is going to be variance in any process. You've got your typical average results, and then you've got some outliers. You want to reduce those outliers. You want to reduce the variance within the process. And this is something that we'll look at more a little further down the road in Chapter 14. The PDCA model stands for Plan, Do, Check, and Act. So you need to plan how you're going to improve a process, and then do that. Execute the plan, and collect data. See, how did your plan work? Did you, in fact, make an improvement or not? And so that's where the check comes in. You're comparing your results before and after to see what type of impact you had, positive or negative. And if your results are good, then you might want to implement that plan on a wider scale. If it didn't work, well, back to the drawing board, as they say, and perhaps come up with a different plan in order to improve your quality. Our third concept is fact-based management. So oftentimes people's opinions or emotions might cloud their judgment. Um, this The image here is of Detective Friday from the old show Dragnet. One of his famous sayings was "Just the facts, ma'am." And that's essentially what we're doing here. We're stripping away people's emotional attachment to processes and the way things are done. Um, just because something has always been done a certain way doesn't mean that's the best way to do it. Um, so you need to not allow emotions to get in the way or opinions. You need to look at the facts. If a certain process just isn't giving you the results you need, uh, then it needs to be changed. And so it does take some time to gather the facts, um, but this will result in the best choice possible for the organization and for the quality of the deliverable. So if you're going to adopt a fact-based management policy, you need to gather facts. You need facts to work with. And so you need to measure things, maybe it's how quickly things are done, or the quantity, the number of deliverables created in a given amount of time. Um, and so you need to decide what you're going to measure. You need to measure it. You need to gather your data. You need to understand that there is going to be some variation in that data, and you have to try to understand maybe what's causing that variation. So this can get pretty heavy into statistical analysis of data, but you want to essentially gather the data, analyze it, and then from that analysis, use those results to make the best decision moving forward. So, what do you want to measure? Well, um, avoid not measuring anything. That's just sort of a ostrich putting its head in the sand and not wanting to essentially discover something that is potentially unpleasant. Even if you suspect that you might get some bad results, that's how you make improvements. So don't be afraid to really look at the way things are done, the process that's currently being used, even if it steps on some people's toes or ruffles some feathers. This is fact-based management. You're trying to get to that hard data and see how you can improve things. So you want to measure something. Um, you want to measure things, though. You want to put your resources into anything you do in an effective way. You want to be looking at things that are um, important, things that are potentially going to yield the best results. So you don't want to do nothing. You don't want to measure things that you are pretty sure you are already going to know the results from. You want to truly be introspective um, and take a look at the way things are done. Um, Look at previous projects and the lessons learned from those projects. Establish criteria, acceptance criteria, and the milestone schedule is a good place to start with that. And there should be agreement within the project team on what should be measured, when, and under what circumstances. And so when you get your data and you analyze it, um, you want to have a consensus on how to best move forward with the results of that analysis. The second bullet point here is something I strongly agree with, and that is a person closest to the situation should be the one collecting the data. So that person is going to know the process the best. They're going to understand the data the best. They're going to understand what data is relevant. So you shouldn't have someone measuring or collecting data on some part of a project or some part of a process they're not very familiar with. They're going to potentially be collecting the wrong type of data. You want to make sure the data is complete, accurate, and timely. And then the analysis of that data will allow you to make decisions going forward. You don't want to sugarcoat the data. You certainly don't want to fudge your numbers or be anything other than truthful and transparent, because that's what's going to give you the best basis for making positive change. Again, another cliche is that sometimes the truth hurts. Nobody likes to hear that the way they're doing something is not the best it can be, that they need to change or do something different, but that's an opportunity for growth within an organization. So you want to be truthful. You want to, if the data indicates a certain fact, then that fact should trump opinions of other people. And you want to make sure that the data is communicated appropriately to the appropriate individuals. And finally, our fourth and final project quality concept is empowered performance. So you want to have capable workers at every level. You want people to feel like their opinions matter, that they are important. So you don't just want to tell people to do it this way because I said so. You want them to be involved in the decision-making process so that they feel that they're truly a part of it. So a lot of that has to do with the project culture and valuing people at all levels and making them feel that they're a part of the team. So speaking of teams, we've mentioned before in previous chapters, we've talked about the importance of diversity within a team. A diversity of team members will bring a diversity of opinions, a diversity of ideas that is generally beneficial to the project. The project manager should work with team members to establish individual goals for professional improvement. You want to capitalize on the strengths of your team members, emphasize individual responsibilities, and where appropriate, you want to make sure that you benefit from collaboration and sharing. So it's about the individual, but it's also about the team.